Welcome to Malcolm Presents, a streaming platform heard around the world and beyond. And you're listening to Up Close and Personal, which are personal interviews with people who have achieved something in their lifetime. And today we have Pete Koch, not related to Mayor Koch, because both of us are New Yorkers. And Pete is quite a specimen. I met him just recently, and I was attracted to, not attracted to, but I was so he's 6'7", and how much you weigh now?
260 pounds these days.
6'7", 260 pounds, and and not fat at all.
Try not. Try not
And
to.
so I got to speaking to him. I found out that he's a former professional player, a professional football player. Who did you play for now, Pete?
I played for three teams in the National Football League. Started with the Cincinnati Bengals, then spent most of my career with the Kansas City Chiefs. And then I finished with the Raiders, who at that time lived in, they've moved around a fair amount, but at that time they were in Los Angeles.
Yeah. When did you start playing football, and when did you know that football would be your profession?
Yeah, I started playing football, youth football, contact football at 7 years old, and I loved it immediately. And I never stopped. And I was fortunate that the junior high and high school I went to had a group of very good football coaches. This was in the 70s, and I just excelled. Had a passion for the game, and you can have a great passion for something as a young athlete, but unless you have the right coaching and mentorship, you probably won't reach your potential. So it sort of has to be at the intersection of a bunch of different things, and I was very fortunate that way. And from there, I got an athletic scholarship, played football at the University of Maryland,
The Terps.
the Terps, and it was a good 4 years for me. And then I was the captain of the team and honorable mention All-American my senior year.
What
And
position did you play? What did you grow into?
I'm sorry, defensive end.
Defensive end.
Defensive end. And then I was eligible at that time for the NFL draft. I was a first-round draft pick,
Wow.
and off I went.
Now, who did you play with at Maryland? Was it Boomer?
Boomer
He
Esiason,
was a quarterback.
which is a good point of reference because he's anybody, even the casual fan of football, knows who Boomer Esiason is. He had a tremendous career. He started with the Bengals like I did. In fact, he was he was the captain of that I think actually two Cincinnati Bengal teams that went to Super Bowls, didn't win, but he had a heck of a run. And then late in his career, he was traded to the Jets. He's also from New York, and which I think was something that he wanted to finish in New York, and he did. And he was quite an interesting teammate and friend, and a great competitor who had a wonderful career.
Yeah, well, he also brought a lot of attention to Maryland, to the
Absolutely, he
to the
did. He's
team.
he's way up there in terms of the most popular football players. I would say athletes that attended the University of Maryland. I think our standard bearer in the football area at Maryland would be Randy White,
Yeah,
uh, who played about a decade before
yeah.
I did, and had a long and illustrious NFL careers in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And he was also a defensive lineman at the University of Maryland. Very, very proud of that history of defensive linemen that we have at
Yeah,
Maryland.
yeah, the defensive ends are, they're sort of like the glamour boys of the line, because you're called on to do everything, as far as
In particular, get to the quarterback.
the quarterback, but you had
Yeah.
to defend against the run. You also
Mhm.
had to. Did you go after tight ends or something that would come out for passes? Was that part of your duties also?
Not covering tight ends, but very often tight ends will be part of a blocking
Hmm.
scheme and had to deal with tight ends all the time, and which was good fun for me because I was a two-way player in high school, and that was what I played on offense. I was a tight end, but
When did you grow to your full stature? When did you know that you'd be like again? I was a shade under six and like about 190, and I always admired the guys. I never tried out for the football team because I was a midget, and this was Lincoln High School in Brooklyn,
well,
and
I
they had
think
big
it
guys.
was my senior year. I was measured at 6'6", and you start getting measured very carefully in as part of the recruiting process, and the coaches from the universities will measure you. So I get measured a lot, and then again, I went through this whole process sort of all over again when I went through the NFL scouting combine way back in the day. Now that's it's become a very popular thing to watch on ESPN, the combine weekend, and where they evaluate players and give them grades, and ultimately it has something to do, certainly not everything to do. The football players are typically are most exactingly graded on their ability and their how well they might translate to an NFL player by the way that they play in the games. But then almost 40 years ago, they came up with this combine where the teams would sort of pool their resources and then fly in about 250 or 300 of the highest rated college football players, and then put us through a series of physical tests, 40-yard dash, various sprints.
And so
Uh,
you had to go through that. I didn't remember
yeah,
how
they
long
did it.
ago it was.
I was at the very beginning of that. The year that I went to the combine in the spring of '84 was the third year of its existence, and it's they've never stopped. In fact, it's gotten bigger and more popular. It's not more popular in that. Now, just to be clear, some people are under the misnomer that any football player can just sign up and attend the combine and being evaluated. No, it's more like an invitation to
Yeah,
a
that's
private membership club. Yeah.
well, it's becoming like a major television thing. It's no longer
Yeah.
you
No, it
know
used to be secretive, and now
that's on
it's quite the
TV.
opposite.
They're making they make money off of everything.
Yeah, including the players running around in shorts and a t-shirt. So
Yeah.
go
Well,
figure.
speaking about that again, you what was your playing weight? You say you about what 270 now or
Yeah, about 275. My NFL days about 275, and
maybe
oh,
because
that's how I got talking about the combine. I remember now is because again, that's another opportunity for the scouts to measure you. They measure everybody. There's a famous video of Tom Brady getting weighed and measured, and they've got all the cameras on him. It was just the same way. I was in the league about, I guess, about 12 years before. Yeah, about no, no, it's about 18 years before Tom Brady, but it's done exactly the same way. And again, this they'll measure your arm span, the size of your hands. It's kind of crazy, but it's all
When
part
did
of the
you
experience.
when did you grow to be, this stature? Were you in were you still in high school or did you grow out in college or
No, my senior year in high school, I was 6'6". In fact, at the combine, they measured me at 6'6" and 3/8. So that's how exacting they get this thing.
Yeah, and seeing I've been around football players and they are large, but as far as bulky, but you're in shape
Yeah.
because it look like I saw you in the shorts. You have no flab on your stomach. I don't know when you would take your shorts off, but your broad shoulders and you came to a V. Were you always like that,
Well,
or did you?
yeah, no, thanks. I mean, I've just been, one of the good things about my interest in athletics growing up is that, for just about any sport, I mean, strength training in some fashion is applicable to every sport, even sports you might not naturally think of it, like figure skating and tennis, it plays a role, certainly skiing and things where you don't really see the physique of the athletes, but men and women, the strength training is incredibly important. Number one, even starting in youth, it's important that young athletes be doing some form of resistance training in their teens. They should begin because it acts, strength training does, right, acts to protect your body against injury. And there's a risk of injury in just about every sport. And so and the way that works is that, sorry, that's my dog's shaking over there, but it makes when you're strength training, you're not only strengthening your skeletal muscles, but you're strengthening the tendons and the ligaments. And these are the soft tissues that keep our bodies, held together. This connects muscles to muscles and bones to bones and muscles to bones. And it's all very, very important. And it's also a residual benefit. Nobody goes to the gym and does a biceps curl thinking that they're strengthening their tendons, but they are.
Mhm.
And it's a good thing. Should you have an accident, maybe you slip and fall and you have to grab the railing of the banister. If you have strong shoulder muscles, you've got a better chance. Well, you can be certain that you've got stronger ligaments and tendons, and those can act to protect you against an injury.
Mhm.
And again, it carries over into sport. So I've known that for a long, long time. I've had some orthopedic surgeries, my fair share,
Yeah, I
not
can
due
imagine.
in it, but it's just, yeah, that sort of goes along with being a lifelong athlete. But I do feel like at my age and as I get older, I want to be as strong and resilient as I can possibly
Yeah.
be.
Well, to me, as I get older, the big issue is flexibility.
It's a big one too.
That's yeah, the number one thing. But did you ever try to bulk up? Because I've been around football players, that are well into their 300s, and they're not in any shape.
Yeah.
That
Um,
they have the big stomachs, the big legs, but and they're strong, but
yeah. Well,
not
that's
physically in
typically, you
shape.
sound like you're describing the offensive linemen who
Yeah.
do tend to carry more body fat. And every athlete needs to determine whatever position you play. I mean, this goes for baseball players and tennis players too. You need to determine what's the best weight for you. If you're at young athletes, when they start to lift weights, they're inevitably going to gain some muscle, might just be a little bit, because like a tennis player shouldn't be looking to build big muscles like most football players would. There's reasons that most football players, without really exception, really want to be exceptionally strong and powerful, and again, build muscle and take ligaments and tendon strength that will protect them from injury. There's not too many contact sports out there. Certainly tennis and soccer, these aren't really or if they're track and field, they're not contact sports, but these people want to be strong. How strong is exactly strong enough, muscular enough, and weigh the right amount so that they can optimize the performance of their sport.
Mhm. Well, I remember, I was always a football jock. I was always looking at the way people played. And when I first remember following football, I think it was Joe Namath was the quarterback for the Jets, and so he was sort of like an idol. But I remember that he had a lineman that played there, Sherman Plunkett.
Mhm.
I don't know if you remember that name, but Sherman Plunkett had 36-inch thighs.
Mm. Wow.
And I remember my waist, I think, was 33. So his thigh was bigger than my waist.
Pretty wild. That's crazy.
Were
Yeah.
you were your thighs strong, or did you
Yeah,
not
I'm
much,
sure they
or
weren't 36
no?
inches around, but
Yeah, because you
but
have a fairly narrow waist. It's not
well, I can tell you this
yeah,
much, that Joe Namath began his NFL career in the early early 60s.
yeah.
I think I want to say 63, something like that. And the I happen to know a fair amount about this topic. Is there was a it, the strength training, as we sort of understand it today, doing particular barbell lifts for repetitions like a bench press or a squat or a deadlift, that became popular. That did not become popular until the late 60s and early 70s. Before that, the players were told that lifting weights would make them bulky, would make them tight, would slow them down. And that's exactly wrong. Like, you have to lift weights correctly and also integrate stretching and mobility, like you said earlier, Malcolm, is important. But it took some time, and bit by bit, it actually was popularized more readily in college. The man that's considered the first true strength and conditioning coach of football players was a man that was coaching at LSU in the 60s, I think early 60s.
Mhm.
And right away, people began to notice that his players were not getting muscle bound and not getting slower. In fact, they were getting stronger and faster and better. And pretty quickly, and that coach was hired by the owner of the San Diego Chargers, and they became the first NFL organization to have a strength coach as a
Good, yeah.
full-time job.
Well, it's also a word that I haven't heard used, conditioning. If you're not in condition, at the end of the they're always talking about that, actually, about the defensive linemen, that at the end of the game, the offensive team wears them out,
Right,
especially when you have to
right.
tackle Derrick Henry or something like that.
Yeah, which
Because
is
I watched that
which is
game, boy.
difficult even if you're not breathing heavy.
Right.
Yeah, no, conditioning, that basically, to sort of define that for most people would be how quickly you can catch your breath after an expenditure of your energy. In the case of football, that would be running a play, and then, but for boxing, it's quite a bit different, right? So boxing, we all sort of understand that a round of professional boxing is 3 minutes long, and then you get 1 minute rest.
Right.
And I'm speaking here as a little bit as a certified strength and conditioning coach, which is what I am. So the way that a boxer would want to be conditioned, for that matter, an MMA or UFC fighter, they go 5 minute rounds and 1 minute of recovery. That's quite a bit different than NFL plays. The average NFL or college play lasts 6 seconds, and the next play, the frequency within the plays, it can certainly vary, but on average, it's about 30 seconds. So you're going to go all out for 6 seconds, whatever position you're playing, and then you'll have 30, the whistle blows, you can go back to the huddle, you'll have 30 seconds, and then the ball will be snapped again. You'll
Recovery time.
repeat that. And so that type of conditioning is a bit different. But on these long drives, in important times like the end of the game, you certainly want to be a player that's conditioned. You want your teammates to be of at least the condition of your opponents.
Yeah, well, I remember you were speaking about boxing. I took kickboxing. Yeah, just I was ready. I was in my 50s, and you had 3 2-minute rounds,
Mm.
but with 16-ounce gloves.
Mm.
And at the end of the two, like about a minute
Heavy.
and a half, you barely could lift. I barely could lift. I was sort of throwing the gloves. But with that,
Yeah.
and the thing I wanted to ask, I don't know. I was into running. I mean, I wasn't fast, but I had endurance. I've done several marathons, and I noticed when I would be running or doing my training after about 4 or 5 miles, and I was dead tired, but endorphins would kick in. And
Mm.
they call that the runner's high. Do you get that in football? Did you get a certain energy
I'm
after a certain period?
Well, I'm familiar with the runner's high. I've never experienced it, because I'm not like most football players. We're not good at endurance running at all. but I am familiar with that well-known concept. I don't think it's quite the same. I think there's on game day, you know, playing in front of a crowd, which is really a special experience, you know, that I've had the fortune to experience that, you know, starting in high school, it's a small crowd, and then in college, it gets quite a bit bigger, and then the NFL, not to mention how many people are watching on TV, but you're not really aware of that. But the visceral feeling in front of playing in 60, 70,000 or more people is something that definitely impacts your nervous
Oh,
system.
yeah. Okay.
That is it's quite an interesting
I
feeling.
can imagine. Now, when you, what years were you playing?
I was in the NFL from 1984 to 1989, 6 seasons.
Was that, I know, take us, was that part of the steroid period, or was that?
Steroids have been around and part of the game, I think, you know, they've been around since the 30s for sure, for you know, in some way, shape, or form, for medicinal purposes, and also the development of muscle and other benefits. Um, and they will always creep themselves into any sport where there's an opportunity to enhance performance, particularly if you can mitigate any risk. And that's pretty much the category that anabolic steroids is held within all sport, as far as I can tell, including women, from the Olympics to football to baseball to, you know, Major League Baseball to the NBA. I'm quite sure it's everywhere, has been for 60 years,
Yeah.
and isn't going away.
Yeah, because you always see the, especially in the old football pictures, you know, where the you know, actually the defensive guys, you know, are always up on steroids, which makes them a little crazy. And you see, like when you see guys, you know,
I don't
playing,
know. I
they're on
don't.
steroids, when they're yelling and screaming
Ugh, wow. Yeah. No. I mean so the psychological, I suppose you're
yeah,
speaking of, implications of taking anabolic steroid. By the way, anabolic steroids is a very broad term that talks to a whole bunch of different chemicals and molecules. So it does have the potential, you know, there's this term that's been around for 50 years, roid rage. Is that a
yeah, I think
possibly real
it's
thing? It probably is.
typified by what's his name? Oh, I'm forgetting his name. I'll come up again. Uh, but you know, but I think it's a lot less now because of the testing, the blood testing. I hope it is.
Yeah, you know, I'm no authority on the blood testing, and I do know this much, that the it's complicated.
Yeah. Oh, by the
And
way, the name I was thinking about was Lyle Alzado,
Alzado, yeah.
because he's the typified. He's the one that they give an example of,
I
you know,
think, and
going a bit crazy.
I think a lot of people hung that hat, that moniker on him, and then it carried over when he died quite
Yeah.
young. I believe he was 42 when he died, and that it was very strange. I'll make a brief comment. I knew Lyle not well, and he had actually stated in an interview, he died of brain cancer,
Yeah.
and he was doing interviews while he knew he had terminal brain cancer. And in one, he stated, or at least one interview, he stated that he felt like, or somebody had, or responded to a question, perhaps, I don't remember, that he felt like steroids had something to do with his brain
Right.
cancer. I know his, but that's been debunked. I actually know his doctor,
Yes.
and he debunked it. And I said, "Well, why would he say it?" He goes, "I don't know."
Yeah.
I just, I mean, and I'm sympathetic to that, because I mean, imagine having a terminal disease, and
Yeah.
then and we withered it away in front of, you know, the
Yeah.
public,
Right.
and then getting asked questions. I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't know why.
and the other thing that they talk about is also shooting you up with the cortisone. You get, you get a pulled muscle or you get a strained muscle, and instead of curing it, they put the cortisone so you don't feel it. And there's so many people you see these movies that athletes have been their career has been ruined by playing because they're not healthy.
Yeah. Uh, I think you're confusing cortisone with which is not a painkiller, but with injectable painkillers like lidocaine, which is a very popular one.
Okay.
But cortisone would be used. I've been injected over the I don't know a couple times. It acts as an anti-inflammatory to sort of calm the joint down when it's sort of over flushed with fluids. Uh, Whereas uh, I mean, this topic was addressed front and center of injecting athletes with painkillers in the movie North Dallas 40.
Oh yeah, that was a good movie. I like that.
It's a good movie starring Nick Nolte, and it
Yeah.
came out in the late 70s based on a book by Peter Gent, who played for the Dallas Cowboys. And he was a journalism major in college at Michigan State. And guess what? He spent some years in the NFL, and he had all this source material. And I think that novel was published the first year he was out of the NFL, and it was a #1 bestseller, became a movie. And squarely in the middle of what the movie discusses is not right in the middle, but a very important subplot was that you had these two athletes, and they both had injuries and the team doctor offered to inject them with a pain killing medicine so that they could play the game. One says no, the other one says yes, and the story plays on.
Yeah.
That's real stuff, but you won't you won't the I can only speak to the years that I was in the National Football League, and before that at Division 1. Believe you me, Division 1 is as competitive as anything, especially now that they're paying the players, paying them like NFL players sometimes. And so what happens behind closed doors in that relationship between the medical team, the medical staff, and the athlete, which is protected by HIPAA laws, you're never going to hear much about that at all. And that's the beat
Almost
goes
the
on.
athlete reveals it. Well, what do you think of the NFL today? I mean, now with the major TV coverage, and I assume the money is much more. When you get somebody that's being paid, 80, 90 million dollars a year,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially
No,
the
it's
quarterbacks or the wide receivers.
yeah, the growth of the NFL is astonishing, really. The changes in that part of the popularity of the NFL since I played is it's great fun. It's and to know that I played some small role in the history of developing, and then there were the guys before me. You mentioned earlier, Joe Namath and the NFL players that I looked up to when I was a kid, and then there was the guys that Joe Namath probably Y.A. Tittle and these guys that
Well,
Joe Namath looked up to, right? And the beat goes on. And now you've got young kids that are going to look up to the Patrick Mahomes and aspire to
that guy
play
is
like that.
what they're playing tonight, by the way, if you
Yeah,
Kansas
no,
City. And
it's
he's amazing because he finds a way of winning. He hasn't been doing well, but he
well,
wins.
he's yeah, no, Patrick Mahomes is a very, very special athlete, and who, make no mistake, is, contrary to I think he comes off in a very relaxed, kind of a goofy way at times during interviews. I think he comes across as also a very good young man and a family man. I don't have a bad thing to say about him, but I think people at the beginning could take him lightly because he was so relaxed.
Yeah, I'm sure in the
And
locker room he must be different.
well, what's happening between his ears and his brain is it's as high a level as we've ever seen out of a team sport athlete. I mean, it's well known and well understood that Tom Brady has this great, processor known as his brain, and the quarterbacks of my generation, particularly Elway, and I would add Dan Marino, and certainly Montana and Steve
Oh,
Young. They,
yeah,
they were
the
also
great ones.
very, very gifted in the way that they were thinking about the game. And I would say Patrick Mahomes, and he's also very fortunate to work with one of the great geniuses of the game, Andy Reid, his head coach. But you put those two together, and you've got something very, very special.
And now, did you find out you always hear about, when you get out of college and you get the first year in the pros, whether what position, no matter what position you play, that the game is so much faster in the pros than in college. Did you remember anything about that, the transition from college to pro?
Yeah, I had that same experience. I think that's a popular notion, and I think it's truthful. I think the game does get faster, but I think above all is that you noticed that the opponent really doesn't have any weak spots. There were ways that we could exploit opponents in college because at certain positions they weren't very strong, and we could take advantage of that. But in the NFL, everybody across the board is so talented. I mean, in training camp every single year, every team cuts half the guys that come into training camp, half of those guys. And that group of guys are so talented that they were the best guys on their college
The
teams.
college teams?
So it's deep.
What do you think now of the new rules that they're trying to prevent injury, but a lot of the old pros say they're babying the sport, like protecting the quarterback, the different ways you could hit. Uh, do you think that the NFL has lost some of its, uh, I guess, masculinity? I don't know what word to express that, but it's
Yeah.
fiercefulness. People liked it because it was a violent sport,
Yeah.
and
I
it's
think
still
it has
violent,
lost
but
some of the
not as
violence,
much.
and I
Yeah,
think it was necessary. Yeah, it was necessary. And it was for those that don't know the history, this was all brought to light in the 90s when it was learned that um, a great, great football player named Mike Webster, who was the center for the Pittsburgh Steelers and played a long and illustrious career. He was a center and the center for Terry Bradshaw, and he won those guys together won 4 Super Bowl rings. And within in less than a decade after about a decade with which he had retired, he died um, a broken man. Technically, Mike Webster died of a heart attack, and because he was alone and state laws, uh, an autopsy was performed. And through the genius of the medical examiner in the city of Pittsburgh, where he died, it was found out that he died of a very, very rare, really what was going on. He was dying of a very rare brain condition that is only caused by massive and repeated trauma to his brain through his skull. And the medical examiner revealed this to the public, which led to it changed everything in the
mm,
world. It's called CTE, uh, uh, chronic traumatic
mm,
encephalopathy.
it's
It's a
different.
mouthful, but this condition is only found, besides football players, it's found in boxers. That's about it. And this opened up Pandora's box of what other NFL players might be going through,
And
and
and what they might give
everything
up for.
changed.
I know it's a big monetary thing. It's what they might be covered for with their injuries. Because, again, watching the news, there was a lot of controversy about, football players dying at an early age or having Alzheimer or having something wrong with their head,
Right. Something wrong with their brain.
something wrong with their
And
brain. And
right. So when this was finally, after several years of study, and the was encouragement that NFL players agree, there was a movement within the NFL, was a willing partner, that former NFL players were encouraged to donate their brains to be autopsied and to see if they had CTE. And a massive study was underway, and it continues.
yeah,
That
I know a big thing is whether what they have will be covered by their teams or by their insurance, how they're treated versus after they leave, they're on their own. Wasn't this a big union thing, the football union?
Yeah, I think you're conflating a few things
Could
there.
be.
One is just simply medical coverage. And yeah, so it's a big topic. But
I know.
some money that the NFL collects, and there are many, many billions of dollars a year, and they squire some money away for retired NFL players that can provably demonstrate that they have a dementia that can be traced back to their playing days, the trauma that they accumulated
Right.
in their playing days. Yeah.
But anyway, Pete, I hate to cut you off, but actually we're about 35, 36 minutes. We're over time. But it's a fascinating topic, and I'm a jock, so I love it. Love to have you back on the show. What are you doing now as far as professionally?
My day job is I'm a strength coach and personal trainer. A lot of people ask me if I work with athletes. Not so much. I mean, it's been my passion just to help regular folks to stay as good as they can possibly be as they age. And if you're not thinking about it and proactive about your physical fitness, then it's not going to go as well as it could possibly go as you age. And so I work with folks of every age.
Yeah, do you have a website that we could reach you?
Yeah, it's just uh, in fact on social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, just my name, Pete, Pete Koch, Koch, Pete Koch. I'm easy to find.
No, okay. Anyway, thanks very much, and I'll see you around the quarter. I'll see you around
By the pool.
by the pool. Anyway, thanks again for joining us.
You got it. Thanks, Mel.
You're listening to Malcolm Presents. The show is up close and personal, and our special guest this week was Peter Koch or Pete.
Either one.
Okay. Anyway, have a great week, and remember, if you haven't voted, vote. Tomorrow is election day. Bye.